Bear, I want to start right there, man. Use the BCS. We're not here this morning and angry and complaining, and the power brokers and the College Football Playoff Committee don't have any say, and instead we really don't even have a proper college football playoff 12 because I don't think anyone actually thinks that they're ranked properly this morning.
No, the whole thing's screwed up. I mean, look, I was pro BCS, and incidentally, the BCS would look pretty damn fun in this season.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia versus Oregon for a national championship. I think we'd all agree that those two teams outperformed basically everybody else. But look, I mean, if we're going to have a 12-team playoff, there are so many issues with this one that need to essentially go away. First off, automatic bids. There's no reason for them. There's no correlation between conferences of any kind. And then the whole automatic bids, it's going to have automatic bids. Why do you put them in the top four? I mean, Texas has the easiest path to the college football playoff.
Just like their regular season, Barrett. Just like their regular season, man.
I mean, it's so dumb. And so, I don't know. This is what people wanted. And I kind of go back, like, look, I just had Rhett Lashley on the podcast. It just got posted on College Football Smothered and Covered. Rhett's awesome. The debate between the final spot was between SMU, who I think is actually really, really good, and a 5-3 in the SEC Alabama team. 5-3. Does a team that goes 5-3 in the SEC deserve any shot at winning a national championship? I think we all know the answer is no.
By the way, I do want to introduce Barrett. Barrett podcasts college football, Smothered and Covered. He's a radio host at SiriusXM College and also writes for Outkick. Probably should have done that at the beginning. But Barrett, back to
that's all right.
Back to your thing about Rhett, Arkansas. If there's one team that I'm cheering for, it's SMU just because of him. What are the actual shots that they could not just make it past this round, but maybe end up in the championship?
They have a shot to make some noise. Getting to the championship, I don't know. I would pick them to upset Penn State. I think they're better than Penn State. I think this is not a cute little story. This is like Kevin Jennings. The world got introduced to him on Saturday night. He's been doing that since essentially mid-September when he beat out Preston Stone for the job against BYU. That is exactly what he's been doing. And Rashard Smith, same thing. This is not a joke. This is not some cute little story. And then their defense is loaded with experience, right? They talked about that in the broadcast. That defense was lights out for, 3 quarters? Mm-hmm. And Rhett talked about this on my show today. The only reason they had to scramble to win that game is because they got some really bad calls from officiating, and B, they made 1 or 2 mistakes, and then things got sideways. But you saw how good that defense is. You saw how good that offense is. That is a complete football team. And this idea, I know Alabama fans and people that were on the side of Alabama were like, well, who would win in a neutral site game? I'm like, damn, SMU probably would. Alabama lost to Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns. SMU probably would. They're that good. So I think the world got introduced to them on Saturday night, and yeah, I think maybe not win it, but could they upset Penn State? I think they could, and then in the second round, whatever. We'll see what happens.
Barrett, who has the biggest complaint that didn't make the college football playoff?
The biggest complaint, I think, would be Miami. I know, the whole Alabama thing was ridiculous. You're Miami. You've lost 2 games, right? You lost two good teams. And, if you're going to have a team like Clemson get an automatic bid, then why even worry? Why even have conferences, right? Mm-hmm. Just erase them all. Is Miami a top 12 team? I think they might be. And so I think the team that has the biggest stripe is Miami because the system isn't made for a team like Miami this year. And if it was just if there was a little bit of common sense, then they'd probably be in the field.
Barrett, I want to ask you about Georgia. They won the SEC championship this weekend, but it did come with some consequences. I know Florida State fans still up in arms after they were left out with Jordan Travis's injury last year. I don't know Beck's timeline. I don't care what Kirby Smart or anyone else from that staff says about, oh, he'll be ready because I want to wait and see till that game actually gets going. How does that affect him if Carson Beck can't suit up in their initial quarterfinal game against either the Notre Dame Fighting Irish or the Indiana Hoosiers?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's a torn UCL. He ain't going to play. I mean, he ain't going to. There's no way. I don't think it matters all that much. Carson Beck's not this superstar. Carson Beck was a liability for the majority of the season. I mean, he was – I'm not saying that to be – but he was a liability for the majority of the season. So is it that big of a deal? Okay, I mean, you want to have that big game experience. I get it. But can Gunnar Stockton come in and take over and be just fine? I think he can. Plus, he has that running element that Carson doesn't really have. So I know he's this big name. I get it. But he literally was the weak link of that entire team for like a 6-game stretch in the middle of the season. So, I mean, the experience, again, that's nice to have, but Gunnar Stockton, I think, brings a little bit more of a dynamic offense. He will put a little more dynamic offense in place. And, look, they've had trouble rushing the ball for a majority of the season. You put a guy who can run back there, maybe that sparks the entire rushing attack.
How about the situation he found himself in Atlanta on Saturday? He got dinged up a little bit too, but it sounds like that he's going to be ready for that upcoming game here in a few weeks, and they get the bye and everything else. Barrett, when you look, by the way, we're talking with Barrett Sallee, podcaster, college football, Smothered and Covered, Sirius XM College Radio, and also writes for Outkit. Which game are you most looking forward to of the initial 4?
Notre Dame, that Friday night. I mean, think about that, man. Notre Dame, a playoff game on campus. Yep. The first ever on-campus playoff. I mean, that is just going to be awesome. And, look, I'm not the biggest Indiana guy. I think we had the debate wrong a little bit. If we're going to talk about best team, Indiana might be the one that needed to be left out. But, I mean, just the whole atmosphere in that first game is just going to be awesome. I don't know how competitive it's going to be. I call Notre Dame the best, most boring team in college football just because in terms of floor, they're really, really high in terms of their bad days. I don't know how high their ceiling is, but, man, they just go about their business and just pummel teams into submission, lesser teams. I don't know if they can do that in the first round, but just everything about that. They're not going to have the NFL battling college football like we're going to have that next day. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to be watching it. It's just going to be so much fun. Plus, I might be there.
Yeah,
so there's that.
I got a chance to take in South Bend earlier this year. We've got a coworker and a friend that is not a Notre Dame alumnus, but he's a big-time Notre Dame fan, and he kept telling me, just wait till what you're in for. And I have to give him credit because they waxed Florida State, and that was a really cool atmosphere that got to see in November, and it is going to be so cold in South Bend here in a few weeks. So
yes, it is.
You will definitely get the full experience. It might be cold in Memphis, Tennessee, where Arkansas is going to be playing Texas Tech for a Liberty Bowl. A couple interesting things, of course, old Southwest Conference foes. Joey McGuire grew up in Texarkana, which is like South Arkansas and South Texas. He grew up a Razorback fan, so I thought that was an interesting tidbit. Barrett, I know your focus has been on a lot of other games, but maybe your initial thoughts on this upcoming Red Raiders and Razorbacks matchup.
Yeah, it'd be fun. I mean, you guys know Joey McGuire. He's a really good coach. I mean, he's fundamentally sound now. And Taj is a good running back. Taj Brooks good. Now, I don't know what the transfer portal and the early declaration, all that stuff. Who knows who's going to be playing in that game or any bowl game for that matter. But that's not a pushover. That's a good Texas Tech team. They can pound the rock. They're fundamentally sound.
Beat Arizona State this season.
You beat Arizona State this. Now that was a little earlier on, but still, they they can do that. They have that upside. So I think it'll be a fun challenge. And like I said, it's kind of hard to figure out who's going to play, who's not, or who's going to be on any roster in the bowl season. But I think in terms of intrigue, if things don't get haywire with players leaving, although I know Arkansas had a little bit of a problem with that the last couple of days, it should be one of the more competitive games in December, January, outside of course of the college football playoff.
Barrett, let me let you go with this. So on that subject, I could tell your excitement level for attending that game in South Bend at Notre Dame Stadium. For Arkansas fans that are mulling over the idea of traveling to Memphis, which I mean, if you know your geography, it's not far. It's 2 hours from Little Rock, the state's capital.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of Arkansas fans. Like, what is the apprehension of going to watch a team that doesn't have its full roster with portal guys, Armstrong, Lando getting ready for the draft? Like, you're not even watching the team you saw this year. What's your apprehension if you're an Arkansas fan going to that game?
Well, I would say this. If you go to spring games or used to go to spring games, then you should be interested in this one, because I think bowl games like this have sort of taken over what spring games were 10 years ago before coaches figured out that putting plays and players on tape in the spring is not a good thing. That's all they are. Like, they're kind of spring games on steroids. And, you know, if you want to travel to Memphis in the wintertime, I could certainly I certainly understand if you don't, but, you know, for a lot of these schools, a lot of these coaches, you sort of get a glimpse of the future, and the fact that it doesn't count towards redshirting, I think, is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's the intrigue to me, and they matter. Like, players like them for the most part. If players go on a bowl trip, they generally have some fun. But if nobody wants to go, fine. They're TV shows. Like, that's all they are, and they're reasons to gamble. I mean, it's the truth.
That's the important part.
And if you don't want to watch a Tuesday night game in Mobile, Alabama, or Shreveport, okay, fine. Don't watch it. It's cool. But there's a reason they get put on TV on Tuesday night, because they rate very well. So, you know, again, for Arkansas fans, get a glimpse of the future. Have some fun, whether you're there or whether you're watching on TV. It's a way to get a pretty good grasp of what the future of the program could look like.
Barrett, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you jumping on with us this morning, and enjoy that trip to South Bend. I know I did.
Oh, man. I hope that – I'm trying to figure out if my – because I run my own business. So, like, I'm the budget. I'm like, oh, man, hotels in South.
Swipe the card. Swipe the card. Worry about it later, man. Swipe the card. Worry about it later.
If you've looked at hotels in South Bend, you might have a different opinion.
Oh, man. Appreciate it, buddy. Hopefully it works out.
Thanks, man.
That's our buddy Barrett Sallee. Does a great job covering college football for a variety of different platforms.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.